Welcome to Women in International Law, a podcast of the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights and the Atlas Network.
Join us and hear from women with varied experiences and career paths in the field of international law. Coming up in this episode,
as I go forward with my life, I try not to forget where I come from. It's good to know where we want to go, but it's also good to be reminded of our past and why we've taken some decisions and perhaps revise them, perhaps reaffirm them at certain points of our lives. For me, given the topics that I'm working on and I'm interested in working and being close to victims to human rights abuses is very important.
My name is Paige Morrow and I am with you from the Graduate Institute. I myself am a research associate at the Graduate Institute, along with being the senior legal advisor to the UN Special Rapporteur for Freedom of Expression. I am here today with Jelena Aparac, who is Head of Policy, Advocacy and Research at Legal Action Worldwide. And we're here to hear a little bit more about her career path so far into international human rights law and as a woman human rights advocate. Jelena, thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, let's get right into it, Jelena. We had a really interesting discussion with you a few days ago about your journey into the UN system. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? You've had a couple of roles. What took you into them?
It's UN and I are kind of like a back and forth relationship, I could say. I started straight after I finished Geneva Academy, LLM, in 2009. As intern with OCHA, Office for the Coordination for Humanitarian Affairs here in Geneva, in the UN headquarters in Geneva, working on emergency preparedness and donors planning, budget planning as a young intern. I moved from there to the appeals chamber, that is a common appeals chamber to both tribunals for the former Yugoslavia and Rwanda, to work also as an intern for a few months. And then I actually didn't have enough money to continue unpaid internships, like many of the students don't these days. And so I've decided to stop the internships and to do other things. And at the time, actually, I started a PhD that was in Paris Nanterre University. But then I came back a few years later as UN expert for special procedures, and particularly the mandate for the UN Working Group on the Use of Mercenaries, where I was a member of the working group and the chair rapporteur for a year in 2021.
And in your current role as Head of Policy, Advocacy and Research at Legal Action Worldwide, what is your remit, or what issues are you working on?
So Legal Action Worldwide is a legal NGO composed of international human rights, humanitarian, international criminal law lawyers that work mostly on the creative strategic litigation for victims of crimes that take place in armed conflict or complex environments. And in this role, my position is to really lead the team on everything that is advocacy and policy influencing for change, for better protection of victims of armed conflict and international crimes.
And what motivated you to set off on a career in international law and human rights advocacy?
As a young teenager, I was growing up in the former Yugoslavia, which turned out to be Croatia, where during the war. And I decided that it's something that I really want to engage in a long term professionally, to do the law and through the law to find ways that are more perhaps objective, more rational, although we can never rationalize the war, but to work to protect people and victims of armed conflicts around the world.
What were some of the initial challenges that you had when you were setting off onto?
Quite a lot, actually. Well, first one was that I arrived to Paris and I started to study law where I didn't speak French. So studying law in French without knowing the language was quite difficult. So I learned French as I was learning law. And I thought, oh my God, I will stop after 2 years. And then I continued. I passed the first year, I passed the second year. And then I thought, how far can I go? I liked the challenge, so I engaged in that challenge. I got my master's, I got LLM from the Geneva Academy, and I thought I will never do PhD. And then I did the PhD as well. The other challenge was the fact that I was a woman. clearly that was a challenge. And I have had direct comments on several occasions in different contexts that because I'm a woman, I wouldn't understand what the conflicts are, what does it mean to be in the conflict zone, or it's a very male-dominated world, armed conflicts, military aspects. So you often have prejudice coming towards you. Being from Eastern Europe is also one of the challenge that I faced, as there have been presumption that girls from Eastern Europe have a specific positions to hold in a society and not necessarily having decision-making positions or influencing positions. So quite a few challenges, in fact, that I'm sure I'm not the only woman to face, unfortunately.
And can you highlight a particular moment or experience that you would consider important in terms of shaping your career path?
One was the fact that I've been through the war, and that clearly made me decide that I want to work on the issues where I'm close to victims. My second moment that was really important and influential was when I got my LLM from Geneva Academy. And that I said at the event, but it's very true, because it was the moment where I felt like, well, now I have the official recognition of the things that I felt maybe have just been some dreams of a young girl that has been through the war. And so now I'm actually not that young girl anymore. I am a professional. And it's very encouraging. It's very motivating. It was very inspiring by the professors I had and other students that were with me at the Geneva Academy. And I think the third moment for me was when I became a mother and learning the true place of a woman in the world, and that it is a challenge where you feel rather alone, and yet at the same time not alone at all, but having a whole team of other women that are in the same situation. So it was a moment where I started to see the role of women in the society through different lenses.
And you're currently with a leadership role in a nonprofit organization, but you also hold a PhD. How do you see yourself combining academia with the role of a practitioner?
I thought it was going to be, when I initially took this decision to take both paths of my career, I thought it was going to be an interesting and easy path where I will just combine and swing from one to another, come back. But in fact, it wasn't that easy. It's very box style thinking. Practitioners often feel that academics do not understand how it is in the real world of practice. And academics think that it's a different world out there from practice, and they are very much disconnected, that is my feeling, with armed conflict and some of the realities that do occur in real situations. I felt like I had to justify very often my positions and why I'm choosing to do both. But I very often also found people that were open-minded to things, and they actually wanted to engage. And when that does take place, it actually brings beautiful results and very useful results for both academia and policymakers and practitioners.
And when you went into doctoral studies, you were already into your career at that point, and your child was born shortly thereafter, around that time. Did you see a professional benefit to setting off into your doctorate, especially as you were into your career, or was it more of a personal challenge?
So when I started a PhD, and then I had my first mission with Doctors Without Borders, with MSF in South Sudan. And I feel like I was very lucky, because I wrote to my supervisor, Marie Naud, in Paris, and I said, I've started a PhD. I love the topic that I'm doing. I think it's very important. It's on business and human rights in armed conflict. But I have this proposal for the mission with MSF. I don't want to stop PhD. What do you think? I also didn't want her to think that I'm not serious about my PhD. And I think having a woman supervisor who strongly believes in women is very important in your career path, whether academic or practitioner. And she wrote to me, I know you will finish your PhD. I know you can do it. And so I packed my things. I packed my PhD research, and I went to South Sudan as a first mission. And I have been taking my PhD to all other missions with MSF. and continue doing the research. And I think having a maturity of doing the PhD helped a lot, because it's not an easy process to write a PhD. The fact that I was in an armed conflict was very useful, very inspirational, and helped me focus my research. I had my daughter towards the end of the PhD. So my friends told me that I had 2 babies, one my daughter, the second the PhD. It was not easy, but why should it always be easy, right?
One thing that young people who want to go into international human rights law struggle with, or into the international field, is securing the first position in the field. You were sent into South Sudan with MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières. How did you secure that position?
I think I was inspired by Geneva Academy and all these humanitarian professionals that were surrounding us during the course, and also in all these lectures that were organized by Geneva Academy. So I felt like it's the world that I want to learn more about, to have some experience in that. You have to be persistent in applying, and very often they say it's who you know. I don't believe so much in that. I know many people do, but I feel it's more like know yourself and what you really want to do, and make sure that you follow the path. You prepare yourself for applications. There is not a magic formula. I think everybody has to find their own way. Being in Geneva is extremely good way to start, because it's a small world and you are close to different actors, different organizations, NGOs, international organizations, and through different academic institutions that can facilitate this process. It's a very good way.
What made you rejoin civil society?
As I go forward with my life, I try not to forget where I come from. It's good to know where we want to go, but it's also good to be reminded of our past and why we've taken some decisions, and perhaps revise them, perhaps reaffirm them at certain points of our lives. For me, given the topics that I'm working on, and I'm interested in working and being close to victims to human rights abuses, is very important. It is important to have the understanding of international policy proceedings, which I learned through the UN system and the UN working group. It was important for me to learn how humanitarian action and humanitarian world works, as I've had experience with Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. And then I felt it's good for me also to learn how legal advocacy and legal strategies can work in terms of protecting victims, and also come back much closer to victims to understand dynamics. And I think it's good to come back, and we always bring something new to new positions, but we also take something from those new positions with us.
And you're clearly someone that has put a priority on in terms of ongoing learning and building your expertise. What skills are you working on acquiring these days?
I'm quite keen to sharpen my leadership positions and what they call transformative skills now. To say it's not just being an expert in one thing, but it's really to learn from the experience, gain some skills that you can use and adapt to different positions in your life. And that is something that is challenging, but also interesting when we move forward in our career path. If we change positions, if we change organizations, employers, how do we adapt to new positions, to new employers, to new organizations? What can we bring? And these skills that we gained before, how can we adapt them to the new context?
I think for practitioners of international human rights, there can be some emotional fatigue, particularly with the current global context. How do you remain motivated, engaged, and avoid burnout?
Burnouts are almost inevitable in the jobs that we do, because it's really hard to find the limits between what you truly believe, what your engagement is, what your life cause is, and doing it as a job. for me, I've never done it as a job. I've done it because, yes, it is a job, but I believe in it. So I invest myself a lot in every position that I do. I have personally been trained on how to identify signs, so it's something that I try to be careful about. And when I see that I'm getting tired, losing concentration, I'm always in a good mood, there are a few signs, then you kind of put a break and say, stop now, I need to take a little bit of time for myself. It is important to also have good parachutes, or, the cushions who will be able to pick you up. And it's very often your colleagues and your friends, your close ones.
If you could go back to yourself at the start of your career, what tips would you give yourself about being an effective human rights advocate?
I would say trust your instincts, trust yourself, and do not take things personally, and do not make people that have prejudice or discrimination against you affect you in your decision-making process or life choices. Be more courageous and dare more in my career.
Thank you, Jelena, for sharing your time and expertise with us. It's been such a pleasure to hear about the path of your career so far, and I look forward to staying in touch with you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, and good luck with all your work.
Thank you for tuning in to Women in International Law, a podcast by the Geneva Academy of International Humanitarian Law and Human Rights and the Atlas Network. If you found this episode inspiring, be sure to subscribe for more insightful conversation.
Stay updated for upcoming events featuring women with diverse experiences in international law at geneva-academy.ch, and explore inspiring women's profiles and interviews at atlaswomen.org.